Hello. Today I got the message that you see on the middle of the screen. It's fairly anti-transgenderism, and it's essentially saying logical is XX does not equal XY, and illogical is XX equals XY, and we're going off of feelings. So this is an argument against transgenderism, and it's the foundation for further arguments against transgenderism. So I kind of wanted to explore this argument, and we're going to do that actually by taking a look at the documentary What is a Woman, produced by the Daily Wire. So we're actually just going to go ahead and jump right in. So in this scene, Matt Walsh, the main guy who made the documentary, is going to go question a university professor. And I'm going to play the whole clip all the way through, and then we'll talk about it.
What we do in gender studies is not just reduce gender to what psychologists might call individual differences, but rather thinking about gender. And that's not women and man, but gender as a social form, something that kind of infuses itself into virtually all aspects of social life.
Let's talk about that then. I guess we should start with, we've got gender and sex, right?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the two? Is there a difference?
I saw that in your questions and I thought, my goodness, this is what we spend an entire semester kind of thinking through. But what we tend to think about in the social sciences today is that sex refers to a set of biological characteristics and gender is a social construct or category. What I think is often misleading about that characterization is allowed to be sort of messy and complicated. But in that framing, when you split them up into these wholly discrete constructs, studies scholars, and really more specifically people who study gender and sex, we're not talking about sexuality right now, in the kind of academic universe that I travel in, is that we see how deeply gendered ideas, cultural ideas about masculinity and femininity, maleness and femaleness, both in humans and in lots of other animals.
So are gender and sex two different things, or?
Well, I think that they both are and they aren't. I'm comfortable saying that gender and sex are two different constructs, but they're deeply intertwined with each other.
We're talking about gender and sex, and there's a lot of controversies there. If we're talking about a trans woman has all of the male physical characteristics, so would that not be a male then? Couldn't we plainly say this person is a male?
Well,
Okay, so let's talk about this video. Okay, so, obviously this clip is kind of meant to be a little sarcastic and comedic. Once the professor starts talking, dramatic music starts playing over, kind of making it seem like he's giving a long-winded non-answer. And then he even sets it up for a punchline at the end. Once the little discourse is done, he says, "So are sex and gender different?" Kind of implying that the professor hadn't given a reply at all. Kind of meant to make the viewer laugh, like, ha ha ha, look at that liberal professor, didn't even give an answer. But, unfortunately for Matt Walsh, the professor actually gave us enough substance to kind of analyze sex and gender and analyze what a woman is within the first 15 seconds. Okay? So he starts off by saying sex is a set of biological differences that separate us, and gender is more of a social construct. And they're both deeply related. And he even finishes off by saying, yes, I do think they're two different things but they are deeply related. So we're saying sex, biological difference. If you're either male, XX, female, XY, might be intersex, might be different, and this all feeds into what gender you fall into, what are your gender roles. So if we go back to this first argument, yeah, transgender people are illogical because they think XX equals XY. Well, actually they don't. They actually know that they're male or female. They're simply choosing to, identify as a certain gender. And I think, that's kind of pretty evident. If you go online, you see, hey, I transitioned, I'm a trans woman, I transitioned from male to female, or, F to M, so that, trans people are aware of their sex. They're aware that they might have certain genitalia. They're not living in a fantasy world where they're saying, you know what? I was born an XX, but I'm an XY now. No. So let's just explore a little more into the difference between sex and gender. All right. So I think sex is pretty simple, right? Biological differences, chromosomes. Now gender. So if you look at the dictionary definition, we see the male or female sex, especially when considered with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. So in this case, from the dictionary definition, it's saying, right, we've got male and female, and then but gender is especially when we look at it with reference to social and cultural differences. So if we go a little more into depth, we can see kind of what this means. So your gender, in a traditional sense, would often determine a lot of things about you. It would determine what you do. For example, if you're a man, you're a provider. If you're a woman, you take care of the kids, you tend to the home. It determined how you looked. If you're a man, you wear suits, you're tall and muscular. If you're a woman, you wear dresses, you're thin and graceful. You know, uh, and it could even, traditionally, gender would also kind of determine your personality, with men being seen as the confident and aggressive group, and women seen as more accommodating and emotional. So we know gender is especially focused on the social and cultural aspect, right? So different cultures are going to have slightly different gender roles, right? You go around the world, men are expected to do something, women are expected to do another. Maybe in one country, men go to traditionally went toward another. Uh, Women also joined in. Maybe in the U.S., you don't wear a skirt. In Scotland, oh, guess what? Men wear skirts. There's cultural differences. So I think the clear cut answer is okay. When we go back to this logic thing, no one is arguing that you can magically change your chromosomes. People are simply saying, yes, we have a sex. I may be of this male sex, which is traditionally uh, going to, you know, be a man, but I might decide as a male to, fulfill all the things that kind of identify a woman. You dress as a girl, you look like a girl, your personality tries to be soft, you maybe work in a traditional female career, or conversely for a female, you go to the gym, you work out, you cut your hair short, you put on suits, you become the provider for your family, and sometimes you can even cross, this gender line without even changing your gender. You could be a male, identify as a man, but you could be a house husband. You can be the one to take care of kids, and meanwhile your wife is the provider. I think what the professor was trying to say is there's fluidity here, and that's kind of where we get transgenderism from. So I'm gonna make a part 2 on this video, and that part 2 is gonna be less focused on sex and gender, and it's gonna be more focused on how the documentary is intentionally meant to be misleading and attempts to enrage and cause discontent in its viewers.